sorry, you're too late. Guys, there is a cost and a risk to waiting to act. And I want to speak about this because I make cold calls every single day, and there is absolutely a cost and a risk to waiting to act. And I'll speak about it in a few different lenses. First off, I'm going to speak about it in terms of making cold calls. Every single day when I wake up and I get to work or I sit down at my desk here, I'm at my desk, there is a risk between being the last person to make a cold call that day. If there are select customers in the world and they all receive phone calls from people like me who are telemarketers, if you want to call us that, salesmen, and they receive cold calls from people like me on a day-to-day basis, who would you rather be? The guy who is there first, who reaches them before everybody else has called them, or the guy who is there last and has been there now final after terrible salespeople have called them or after they've been solicited all day? There is a little bit of science that goes into sales. And for example, you don't want to call people between the hours of 11 a.m. to noon. Right before they're going to lunch, they're hungry, they're probably cranky, and they've been sold to all morning. You don't necessarily want to reach somebody at that time. Now, you may want to reach them right after they've eaten because people tend to be happier after they've eaten. You may want to call them after the lunch hour. I have to call them first thing in the morning. I would rather my call be the first call that they answer, opposed to me being behind other salespeople who may have already screwed it up, been a little bit too pushy, and just have absolutely soured the taste of salespeople in their mouth for the day. And there is a cost to that wait. When you wait a little bit too long to call somebody, you're going to follow up somebody who is inevitably terrible or doesn't know how to do their job. That is an issue. Likewise, you could follow up somebody who was much better of a salesman than you. They had a better pitch. They actually rehearsed what they were going to say on their cold call. They had a better elevator speech. Everything that they did was better than yours. Now you sound subpar compared to what you were going to offer in the first place. There is a cost to waiting in that. Likewise, if I extended a little bit further to the macro scope of just getting into business, I spoke about this in my video, Time In versus Timing, and you need both. There is a giant risk that you take by waiting to start your company, and that is you're allowing other people to make those calls in that meantime. Partnerships that may have not been formed yet will be formed if you just sit there and continue to wait. The longer that you sit there and wait to start your business, the more it forms in your mind, the more it weighs on you. And then all of a sudden your body starts to feel that weight. And there's two options. You can either start or you can throw the idea out entirely. And most people do the latter. Most people throw the idea out entirely, never start the business. You're never going to achieve the freedom that you want to if you are looking for freedom, that is. You're never going to achieve that freedom without starting something that takes a risk. Start today. You want to act first. If you train yourself, if you set the standard to act before you are ready to do so, you will get much further. There is paralysis analysis, which pauses people and stops people in their tracks from ever achieving what they wanted to. And it's not purposeful. People don't do it on purpose. People don't do it with the intention to not actually do what they say that they're going to, but it happens. And there's only one way to combat that, and it is to act immediately when you have that thought. When I went into starting my business, I had this idea swirling around my head for about 2 months. I thought about it in December, or it was brought to my attention in December time. And then I went into meetings and planning about it for December, the end of December, and then all of January. And then at the end of January, I pulled the trigger on it. And there was reasons for this. Is number one, I had gone into businesses before. And number two, I had also stalled myself out of businesses before because I took too long thinking about it and wondering if it was the right choice. And you can make a quick list, but it's always better to try than to not. And that was my big thing. I didn't want to have the regret of not trying, especially when I already knew that I could be successful in it and that it may lead to this great life that I now live. That is my advice to you. That is what the meaning of this video is to be, is to just simply do it now. Get after it.